Arizona's sinkholes are spreading faster than ever, swallowing roads and fields. Experts are sounding the alarm, warning that the ground beneath the state is becoming dangerously unstable.
We saw a lot of dust in the valley Thursday.
Yeah, but places like Yuma, my old stomping grounds, they took a beating during the monsoon storms. This sinkhole opened up in the Yuma roadway. Wow, look at that. Following the monsoon, winds up to 60 miles an hour, also knocking down a parking structure.
It's hard to believe that the very ground beneath Arizona's sun-baked deserts could be collapsing in slow motion. But that's exactly what's happening. From Phoenix to Tucson, the earth is opening up beneath homes, highways, and farmland, forming sinkholes so sudden and deep they seem to appear overnight. Once stable neighborhoods are now riddled with cracks. Farmland has warped into jagged terraces, and once flat desert roads twist and buckle like ribbons of broken clay. Experts say these aren't isolated incidents. They're the visible scars of a much larger crisis building beneath the state. Decades of over-pumping groundwater have drained the aquifers that once acted like natural support beams under Arizona's surface. As the water disappears, the layers of soil and sediment above begin to compact, crush, and finally collapse. The result? A slow, unstoppable sinking, a process scientists now measure in feet, not inches. Recent satellite imagery from the Arizona Geological Survey reveals entire stretches of desert sagging by as much as 6 feet since the early 2000s. The fissures that form afterward aren't just cracks, they're open wounds in the crust, slicing across highways, power lines, and irrigation canals. In some areas, these rifts stretch for miles and plunge over 80 feet deep. When storms arrive, they flood instantly, eroding deeper, carving new channels underground, and destabilizing everything above them. Rural towns in Pinal County and Cochise County have been hit hardest. Families who've lived there for generations now wake to find sinkholes expanding in their backyards, their wells running dry even as water bills climb. Meanwhile, Arizona's booming cities continue to drill, drawing from the same shrinking aquifers that hold the desert together. If this pattern continues, scientists warn, much of central Arizona could become an uninhabitable patchwork of fractures, a man-made canyon system beneath the desert sky. If the ground itself can no longer hold the weight of our cities, what happens when the desert finally decides to give way? Chapter 1. The cracks beneath the sun. It's hard to believe that Arizona, home to vast unbroken horizons and endless blue skies, could be splitting apart beneath its own heat. Yet every year, as the sun bakes the desert floor, the ground silently fractures. In empty fields, along highways, and even beneath suburban neighborhoods, new sinkholes and fissures are forming, carving deep wounds into the desert crust. Residents first notice them as harmless cracks in the driveway or strange dips in the land. But within weeks, those lines stretch into crevices large enough to swallow vehicles. Near Queen Creek, a farmer reported a sudden hollow opening beneath his tractor. What began as a narrow fracture widened into a 200-foot-long trench overnight. The soil wasn't eroding. It was collapsing. Beneath him, the earth had simply given up its hold. Experts from the Arizona Geological Survey warn that more than 1,400 square miles of the state are at high risk for subsidence and fissure formation. The most vulnerable areas lie across Pinal, Maricopa, and Cochise counties, regions where booming development and water-hungry agriculture have drained the desert's ancient aquifers faster than nature can replace them. As the water disappears, the land sinks. Once plush layers of clay and silt, now dry and brittle, begin to compact. Over time, these layers no longer support the ground above and it collapses, forming fissures that can stretch for miles and plunge over 90 feet deep. Some open so suddenly that roads must be shut down within hours. And yet, Arizona continues to pump. Every gallon drawn for irrigation or city growth is another thread pulled from the desert's fragile fabric. If the surface that built Arizona's cities can no longer hold itself together, how long before the desert stops sinking and starts swallowing? Chapter 2. The desert is collapsing from within. It's hard to believe that what looks like solid ground could behave like liquid, but in Arizona, that's exactly what's happening. Beneath the dry crust of the Sonoran Desert, entire layers of earth are collapsing like an underground sinkhole network, slowly devouring the state from below. Scientists studying satellite data from the past decade have discovered a disturbing trend. Land subsidence zones are merging, connecting once isolated fissures into continuous corridors of instability stretching for miles. Near Eloy, Casa Grande, and Wilcox, the ground is sinking unevenly, creating a tension between stable and unstable zones that tears the desert apart inch by inch. The Arizona Geological Survey reports that some of these fissures are growing faster than expected, up to 4 inches per month, expanding after every storm or irrigation cycle. When flash floods sweep across the desert, water pours into these cracks, eroding their walls and widening them underground. The result? Sudden collapses, sometimes without warning. Entire roads buckle overnight, cattle vanish into holes, and farmers awaken to find fresh rifts slicing through their land like scars on a wound that won't heal. The cause is tragically human. For decades, Arizona's groundwater has been overdrawn, pumped relentlessly to sustain crops, golf courses, and ever-expanding suburbs. Once these aquifers are emptied, the soil above them compresses, removing the structural cushion that held everything in place. Engineers warn that this subsidence is irreversible. Once the ground compacts, it can never refill. The desert isn't empty, it's restless. Beneath the quiet sand, it's reshaping itself, folding inward as if reclaiming the water we've stolen. If the earth below Arizona is already falling, how long before the cities above follow? Chapter 3. It's the towns that are sinking. It's hard to believe that entire communities in Arizona, places built on dreams of endless sunshine and open land, are slowly sinking beneath their own foundations. Yet in cities like Buckeye, Casa Grande, and Wilcox, that's exactly what's happening. The collapse isn't sudden or explosive, it's slow, silent, and merciless. Roads dip where they once ran straight. Walls split like cracked pottery, and fences tilt at impossible angles. Beneath every neighborhood, the ground is giving way. Scientists from the Arizona Department of Water Resources have documented subsidence rates of up to 6 feet in less than 2 decades across key parts of the state. In Maricopa County alone, satellite scans reveal the desert surface sagging like stretched fabric, forming invisible bowls of instability. These depressions aren't harmless, they're structural traps, where future fissures can form without warning. In Wilcox Basin, the change is visible from the air. Irrigation pivots tilt, barns slump, and farmlands now drain unevenly, flooding fields that once sat perfectly level. It's like watching your town sink in slow motion, says one farmer whose well casing sheared off 60 feet underground. Every year the ground moves a little more, and there's nothing we can do to stop it. The culprit is no mystery. Arizona's dependence on groundwater has turned the desert's underground reservoirs into hollow voids. Once the aquifers are pumped dry, the empty layers of sand and clay compress, crushing themselves into denser rock. That compaction creates a domino effect, forcing the surface above to sink and crack apart. The desert is changing shape. Beneath the stucco homes and solar rooftops, the ground is folding inward, as if the earth is reclaiming what humanity borrowed and forgot to return. If Arizona's towns are already slipping into the void below, how long before its cities start to follow? Chapter 4. What if the desert collapses all at once? What if the slow sinking of Arizona isn't gradual at all, but building toward a single catastrophic collapse? For decades, experts have described land subsidence as a slow-motion disaster. But recent data suggests that in some regions, the process may not stay slow for long. Beneath the deserts of Pinal, Maricopa, and Cochise counties, underground layers are fracturing simultaneously, forming an interconnected web of weakness that could give way in a chain reaction, like dominoes falling underground. In early 2025, satellite radar detected sudden depressions spreading across 12 square miles near Eloy. What geologists expected to happen over centuries was unfolding in months. When they analyzed ground movement data, they found something chilling. Multiple collapse zones were sinking, dropping in near-perfect unison. The Earth was no longer subsiding piece by piece, it was flexing as one. Experts call this coupled collapse, and the consequences could be catastrophic. Imagine the ground beneath entire neighborhoods or industrial zones buckling within hours, swallowing highways, pipelines, and farmland all at once. Canals carrying water to Phoenix could fracture. The Central Arizona Project could lose entire sections overnight. The state's most vital lifeline could literally vanish into the ground. Geophysicists fear that these collapses are amplified by changing rainfall patterns. When intense monsoon storms follow long droughts, floodwater rushes into fissures, saturating brittle sediment layers that can't bear the weight. The combination of heat, erosion, and hydraulic shock acts like a detonator for underground voids. Once they rupture, the ground caves in. The terrifying reality is that Arizona's collapse isn't localized, it's systemic. The entire foundation of the state's desert heartlands is under stress, and each fissure is a symptom of a deeper, spreading failure in the Earth's skeleton. If the ground beneath Arizona decides to give way all at once, if the desert exhales in one catastrophic breath, would we even have time to escape? Chapter 5. When the Earth opens overnight. You won't believe how fast it happens. One minute the desert is still, the next it's gone. Entire stretches of Arizona's landscape are vanishing overnight, swallowed by sinkholes that seem to appear from nowhere. To the untrained eye, the sand looks solid, lifeless, eternal. But under the surface it's crumbling like hollow glass. In February 2026, a 200-foot-long sinkhole tore open outside Florence, splitting a quiet road in two. Residents said it started as a faint rumble, like a passing truck, and then the ground simply disappeared. Within minutes, the hole widened to the size of a basketball court. The earth just fell, one witness said, like it had forgotten how to hold itself up. Scientists from the Arizona Geological Survey later confirmed what many feared. The collapse wasn't random. It was part of a larger chain reaction, stretching from Pinal County all the way toward Tucson. Ground-penetrating radar showed vast underground voids, pockets of air and loose sediment left behind by retreating groundwater. The structure of the desert itself is failing, one collapse feeding the next like falling dominoes. But here's what's even more alarming. These sinkholes are forming closer and closer to populated areas. Some now lie just a few miles from Phoenix suburbs, where new housing developments are rising directly atop unstable terrain. Engineers warn that the soil beneath many modern foundations is already under stress, and a single intense rainstorm or localized quake could trigger widespread collapse. Satellite imagery from NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory shows the ground surface near Apache Junction dropping by over 2 inches in just 6 months, forming subtle depressions invisible to the naked eye. Those dips, experts say, are early warning signs, the surface beginning to sag before tearing open completely. If the desert floor can swallow a road, a farm, or a neighborhood overnight, how long before it swallows an entire city? Chapter 6. The cities that could vanish next. No one wants to believe it, but Arizona's biggest cities may be next. Beneath the glittering lights of Phoenix and Tucson, the same silent fractures that devoured farmlands are now creeping toward the urban core. Streets that once felt solid are shifting. Buildings whisper as their foundations flex. and experts warn that the desert's collapse is no longer a rural phenomenon. It's moving straight into the heart of civilization. In 2026, new high-resolution radar scans from the European Space Agency revealed massive subsidence zones spreading beneath the southern edges of Phoenix, precisely where the city has grown fastest. Areas that were once dry and stable now show a steady drop of up to 3 centimeters per month, a rate that could cause infrastructure to crumble within years. Civil engineers are alarmed. Some water and gas lines have already ruptured without explanation. Bridges built to last a century are now twisting under invisible pressure. A highway near Queen Creek had to be resurfaced twice in 1 year because the land beneath kept sinking. These aren't isolated malfunctions. They're early symptoms of a mega fissure system expanding beneath Arizona's metropolitan belt. And the deeper scientists look, the worse it gets. Underground acoustic sensors installed in 2025 have started recording low-frequency tremors, not earthquakes, but vibrations caused by sediment collapsing into empty space. The sounds are described as the earth sighing, an ominous groan that precedes surface failure. Meanwhile, groundwater pumping continues unchecked. Developers drill deeper wells to keep lawns green and golf courses lush, but every drop extracted hollows the ground a little more. The once sturdy clay layers that supported Phoenix's sprawl are now compressing like soft bread under the weight of skyscrapers. It sounds apocalyptic, but the data is real. The cracks are already visible. If Arizona's cities have become the next fault lines, how long before the skyline we built on desert sand begins to slip beneath it?
Chapter 7. Beneath the surface lies a ticking time bomb.
Beneath Arizona's golden desert plains and endless sunshine lies something far more dangerous than anyone imagined. A ticking geological time bomb that scientists say could change the state's landscape forever. It's not a single sinkhole or fault line, but an entire underground system unraveling at once, collapsing silently under pressure built over decades of human use and natural decay. For years, experts warned that excessive groundwater pumping would hollow out the earth beneath Arizona, but few understood what that really meant. Until 2026, when new subterranean imaging revealed massive, interconnected cavities spanning miles under Pinal and Maricopa counties. These aren't isolated gaps. They're part of a growing labyrinth of instability, spreading like veins under the desert. Seismologists describe the discovery as deeply unsettling. The images show layers of rock, once compact and sturdy, now sagging, folding in on themselves like collapsing lungs. As water levels drop further, the crust becomes brittle. So brittle that a single moderate quake or heavy flood could trigger an unprecedented chain reaction of collapses. It's not just farmland at risk anymore. These underground voids stretch toward major infrastructure routes, including segments of the Central Arizona Project Canal and major interstate highways. Engineers fear that if one section gives way, entire networks could follow, fracturing water pipelines, collapsing roads, and cutting access between Phoenix, Tucson, and the southern border. What happens when this buried system finally fails? Experts predict sudden surface collapses, massive ground ruptures, and a cascading effect that could permanently reshape Arizona's valleys. The collapse wouldn't be local, it would be continental in scale. A domino failure of the desert's structural foundation. The desert isn't dying quietly. It's holding its breath, waiting for the moment it exhales. If the earth beneath Arizona decides to release all that trapped pressure at once, will the surface we stand on still be there when it does?
Chapter 8. The collapse has already begun. They said it would take decades, but the collapse is already here. In the outskirts of Arizona's growing cities, entire sections of desert are sinking in real time. transforming once flat plains into warped, fractured wastelands. To the naked eye, it looks like nothing, just a few cracks in the dirt. But step closer and you'll see the truth. The ground itself is splitting open, stretching wider every day. In 2027, a satellite from the European Space Agency captured something chilling. A 200 square mile subsidence zone stretching from Buckeye to Casa Grande, moving downward at a measurable rate of inches per month. Within it, new sinkholes are forming faster than they can be documented. Some are small enough to swallow a car, others vast enough to engulf entire farm fields. When rain comes, they flood instantly, creating temporary inland seas that shimmer like mirages, only to vanish the next morning, leaving deeper voids behind. And still, the pumping continues. Groundwater extraction remains relentless, even as aquifers collapse and desert floors buckle. Every gallon pulled from beneath the surface weakens the crust just a little more, widening the cracks and feeding the cycle of destruction. Engineers warn that critical infrastructure is now at risk. Roads, pipelines, and even power stations sitting above land that can no longer bear their weight. The truth is hard to face, but impossible to ignore. Arizona's collapse isn't coming, it's accelerating. The desert floor that built the state's future is now betraying it, cracking open the illusion of permanence we built our cities upon. So the question remains, if the foundations of the desert itself are breaking apart, what happens when the surface finally follows? If this story opened your eyes to the hidden dangers beneath America's deserts, don't stop here. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and join us as we uncover what's really happening beneath the surface. From the crumbling plains of Arizona to the awakening fault zones of California. Because what's happening underground isn't just science, it's a warning. The earth is shifting beneath our feet, and this is only the beginning.